Hello, welcome, friend, or welcome back. It's almost 2025. How insane is that? It is actually only 2 days away right now. It is December 30th today when I'm recording this, and I can't believe it's already 2025. When did that happen? So, regardless, any time a year hits, it's really good to sit down and obviously reflect on your business. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have no comparison for my business right now. This is my first year in business. And if you're new here, I was actually laid off at the end of January from my tech job. And I've really kind of thrown myself into my business since then because it's one, been keeping me mainly mentally sane because losing a job to me at least was really, really hard because I love being busy and doing things and building things. So my business has been really great mentally for me that way. Obviously, also, my business became a bit of a lifeline in terms of money. It did. It helped put food on the table. So I really took it seriously for the past 11 months. With that being said, of course, these are the numbers as benchmarks right now for a year in business. But again, I have no comparison because I technically started my business last year during the holidays. And so we could do a little bit of comparison from my holidays last year, but that's the only numbers that I have. I don't have any other numbers beside that. So we'll go ahead and jump into what everybody loves to hear and talk about. And again, these are averages, and your business may do differently than mine in the first year, depending on your price of your products, depending on where you're selling, what you're doing. So again, take my numbers with a grain of salt, but I know they can be interesting for people, and especially as a first year in business. I have not been in business for 5 years, which is a lot of the YouTubers I watch actually. They've had their businesses for like 5 years or more, and they're so inspirational to me. But I also have to remind myself my business is only a year old. I have not been doing this for 5 years. So, to start with the numbers, we'll start with quarter one, which is January to March in the fiscal year for a business. And in this month, I made $1,700. This I completely understand. One, January and February are typically extremely, extremely slow months unless you make a product that is good for Valentine's Day, which I have some of what of a year round, any time of year product, but I definitely don't have a spike or can really capitalize on like Valentine's Day per se. So that is not something that I can drive with my traffic. I do know I did a few markets and was starting to test the markets. I actually did a Valentine's market this year and it was not any good for me. Now, maybe if I did it with a different market, it might be better. In general, a lesson I've learned this year is that this particular market is no good for me. I think I've outgrown it, but we can talk about that with my greatest challenges section, which will be right after this revenue section. This is the first time I was jumping into my business full time, so I have no really social platforms. I had not been posting consistently. This was really the time that I was really trying to show up, try things, and experiment with things. So I did not expect to have a bunch of revenue for this first quarter, and that does reflect in my sales. Also, something I'm going to mention is that the sales that I am mentioning is a combination of online sales as well as in-person sales. I don't have that breakdown right now on me. So we'll go ahead and jump into quarter two. Quarter two is the month of April to the month of June, and I made a whopping $12,500. That is mind blowing to me that I did that amount. So that equates to around $4,166 a month. Now, that's equivalent actually to what I used to make on salary. So that's incredible and really crazy. I do know what attributed to this time was one, I found a really, really good market that I profited really, really well at. So I did find and was starting to find markets and areas in New York City where my products sold. So that really helped with that. The other thing too is this is when the TikTok live trend was happening. And by trend, I mean TikTok live's algorithm for some reason was doing really, really well. You were getting pushed out really well and you were seeing sales, people were purchasing. It was something was going on in the TikTok live algorithm that just worked for small businesses. I was also lucky because my particular art style and what I do some other artists were also showcasing on live. So I pretty much took the same similar concept of how they were displaying their products, and I did the same thing for mine. Mine are still different. It's my own artwork, but I wasn't reinventing the wheel on how do I display my stuff on TikTok Live and engage viewers to potentially purchase. That is what I also started at that time, and it was insane. I believe in one of these months I ended up in one live with like the 46 orders, and I was mind blown. That also attributed, I think, to the sales for that quarter as well. So it was a mix of the TikTok Live as well as starting to discover and find pop-up markets that are truly worth my time and monetary value. Next up, we have quarter three. This is the month of July through the month of September. And I made a grand total of roughly $11,200, which equates to around $3,733 every month. Still very good personally to see that. It is down from the last month. One, I don't think I was doing TikTok as much in this quarter because I was starting to prepare and think about Q4, which is a holiday season. And so I wasn't putting as much time into TikTok. I think in general, people are also just like going away more. I think because people know shopping's coming up, maybe that dropped. I honestly don't know 100% why it fully dipped this month. I did no markets in August, and I very intentionally did that to take a break because, again, I just didn't want to spend all this money and I wanted to rest up for the holiday season because that's when I felt or knew I would make my most sales and I was going to be very, very busy. And I didn't want to completely burn out by continuing to do markets in August. So I took August completely off from markets. That is also probably why my sales were down for Q3. And last but not least, we have Q4. Now, something in Q4 that I did that I realized is not added in here is I did do a retail shop pop-up this year. And I'm going to average that brought in roughly $1,000 based on the sales that they have sent me thus far for my time there. So that'll actually bring my total for Q4 to $11,600. Now, partly I messed up in November and I did do a pop-up that was not very successful. I actually lost some money at it. The other thing as well is that I know I could have made more if I had had help at my holiday markets. So I beat personal bests 2 times this holiday season by myself, which is incredible and amazing. I also know I majorly missed sales one day at my final market of the year because the Wi-Fi is so bad. It was so bad. It's bad at this location, okay? If you've been there, you know, you prepare for it. It was extra bad because there's a private Wi-Fi that is specifically meant for vendors, and that Wi-Fi wasn't working. It was completely down. And I 100% know I lost sales because of that, because I had people just waiting literally for like 10 minutes for me futzing around with the Wi-Fi. And that hurts. When you are at a pop-up live, any kind of malfunction you're having technically, it's going to hurt you because you're now having to take your time instead of packaging an order or talking to a customer or checking someone out. Like, you're now futzing with your POS system to check someone out. And it's not cool. So that's something moving forward that I would also gonna add into my challenges section, is definitely working on finding an offline POS system that works, because I'm tired of dealing with that at this particular market. So in total for 2024, Tailology made a gross sales of $36,100. That's crazy. Now, is that livable in New York City? Absolutely not. Totally not livable here. But I think something to reflect upon, especially again, if you're 1 year in business, is the fact that you can even make that amount. I think the fact that people are willing to purchase your art or purchase your product and you're able to potentially make a living off of it, I think is the dream. And that's what I am taking away from this in terms of like, wow, if I continue to scale this, if I continue to put myself into the online ethernet, if I continue to do the really good pop-ups I know and maybe do even bigger pop-ups, there is something here. And essentially, I would say your first year is really understanding your proof of concept, right? Which essentially is like, where does my product fit? who are my customers, something that people actually do enjoy and want to come back to, purchase again. And if you're getting yeses, again, this whole year was experimentation for me on all of those. And this proof here of $36,000 for the year tells me, yes, it's worth investing in. People do really truly love my products and enjoy my brand. There is something here. Again, 36,000 is not livable in New York City by any means. You are just scraping by if you make 60,000 a year here in New York City. Also note that 36,000 is not actually my profit. So when I actually look at my profit, which I do have a profit sheet and a whole Excel that I work in, based on my year to date, my profit margin is at around 40%, which is actually pretty good. If you are falling under 20% with your actual profit margin, you might want to reinvestigate what's going on there because that's not really great. It's going to be very thin, at least. You could do it. If you're at 10%, you definitely are not going to survive. And so you've got to do something and change that. Based upon my numbers and based upon my expenses and all the sales and stuff, net wise, okay, so this is after all my expenses, what I made, that based on the gross, I am at a 40% profit margin. Means the business can grow, means that there's some money that can be put aside and put back into the business, which is really important in your first year. I really have tried not to pay myself anything out of the business. Now, because I didn't have a job this year, that was not totally the case. I did have to take money out of the business a couple times to pay myself, quote unquote, and I did do that a couple times throughout the year as well. But in general, for the first year, I am just trying to put as much money back into the business, which is why I was able to upgrade my equipment. That's something to keep in mind as well when looking at your numbers for 2024. I'd love to maybe make a video more in depth about numbers and calculations because honestly, I've had to figure this out all on my own for the most part. And of course, watching some YouTube videos, but if that'd be really helpful. The next thing I want to talk about is some of the challenges this year because running a business is not easy. And while there's a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, and a lot of fulfillment that can come from it, it's not easy. I will say 100% I've not been great about work-life balance. And I think you'll hear that a lot from other small business owners because I think it's a daily, every year, every hour challenge. I love working personally. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I would categorize myself as that. And having my business that I absolutely just love doing, I am prone to doing that. I also have a very high standard for myself in terms of getting items out. So when someone places an order, I am really insane about making sure that that order goes out ASAP as quickly as I possibly humanly can. I put a lot of pressure on myself that way. And so I definitely prioritize and have prioritized my work over life balance. And so I definitely want to do better about that in 2025. And I want to try to pre-plan ahead. I want to try to batch things ahead. I really want to try to be ahead of that game in 2025 if I can. I know I'll probably have times where I'm going to fall back down on my face and lose my work-life balance, but I think it's a good goal to have for the next year, especially because I do know in general this whole year I really haven't. The second challenge is scalability. This is something that is really difficult when you do custom work. For a lot of artists, they'll start with custom work and then they'll move into more of a product-based business, right? They'll start to do prints and they'll start to do greeting cards. They'll start to do keychains and magnets, all these different types of things that then can be scalable because now you're just selling your artwork. You're not selling a custom bespoke piece to somebody. So I have to find in my business that balance between scalability and the custom bespoke part because that's still very much a core of my business. Some of my favorite moments of 2024, I definitely have to actually say one of my holiday markets. The holiday market that I actually just recently filmed for you guys on what it's like to vend in New York City and the reality of it. Even though I know I had some hiccups in that market, I honestly absolutely loved that market. And the reason really was because of the community. I met people who came back and remembered me from the summer, which was so cool. I had a lot of customers actually come back to get another portrait. There was somebody who lived across the street and they came and they got a really funny picture first, like a mischief ornament. It was so cute. Let me grab that actually for you for a second so you guys can see. This was the portrait that they first got and it was just so darling and it was so funny. They ended up coming back the next day or later that day. No, the next day. So it was a 2-day market, and they came and got that portrait first, and then they were like, we loved it so much we had to come back. They lived across the street, so they were really close by. That just warmed my heart like so much. I think that was also really one of my favorite moments because in my head I realized at that moment like, there are people who like my art. There are genuinely people who like my art. They like what I'm doing. They like the medium that I'm working on, and they resonate with it just like I do. And it was such an aha moment. Like this person came back and got a second ornament from me and a second custom drawing. And I was just in shock. I also had that great interaction with the people from the video. If you guys didn't check it out, I highly recommend checking it out. It's just fun, good feels of what it's like to vend in New York City at a holiday market. So the other thing was this other couple, which I showcased in the video as well. They stopped by my booth on Saturday, but I was very, very busy. I had a line. So they didn't purchase that day, but they ended up coming back and they said, oh, we'll come back tomorrow morning. Because I said, they're like, when are you less busy? And I said, usually right in the mornings. I'm not very busy. And sometimes like an hour before closing. Typically the afternoons I can get pretty slammed. They're like, okay, we'll come back tomorrow morning. We'll be your first customer. I was like, okay. And you know, people will say that and that's totally okay. And then they won't show up. And that's totally also okay because let me tell you how many times I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go do that thing. And then I don't get up in time, right? Or it's raining and I don't want to go outside. You know, I don't hold people necessarily to that, but lo and behold, 11 a.m., right in front of my booth, they were there to get their portraits. There was also the other interaction at that market as well with a guy and his daughter. They circled a bunch of holiday markets. So at this particular location, there were a bunch of like holiday markets happening around. We went and like looked at all of them and they came back and chose my booth and my artwork to be the gift for the family that they were going to see. Really just so much validation, especially as an artist, that people genuinely love my work. They genuinely love what I do and they genuinely want to support it. And that just like, I literally am tearing up thinking about that because it's so hard, especially if you're deciding to be an artist specifically, which there's only so much control you have over your hand and the way you view things and the way you see things, and it's interpretive. And so there's a lot of risk involved being an artist, and I'm kind of in this middle ground because I'm an artist, but I am in the pet niche, which obviously great niche to be in, but I have a particular eye. I'm still an artist, right? I'm not like taking your photo and dumping it into a software, you know, making like that. I'm not doing that. I am hand drawing every single picture I get and every single portrait. So there's a particular look and feel that is just because I've drawn it. It's not from a computer software. So I definitely think that was a favorite moment. And then another favorite moment was obviously getting my new machine, which again, I have a video on getting this beast of a machine and putting it in my apartment. I think that was a favorite moment because it was the first really kind of investment into my business, and it was really the investment of growth. For me to invest in this machinery, I was saying to myself, I need to produce more things quicker and or bigger things, which is what's going to happen in the new year. There was another favorite moment too where I've actually ended up working with some of my customers. So some of my customers have expertises in things like social media. And so I've reached out with them and I've actually become a client of theirs. And so I have these working relationships with some people who are actually even my customers. And it's been so fun, especially for me. I'm very particular about my social media and my brand and the voice. I have struggled to really, you know, like find someone who I can trust that really gets it, right? You know, they're sending me scripts and things that make sense for my business. That's not been a case when I've tried things like Fiverr before. And so I just kind of gave up on like trying to find help for social media because I was like, no one's going to get it. But because these people ended up purchasing from my business, absolutely loved what I do, the stuff they're sending me makes sense for my brand, for what I do, and it just works. So looking forward, what are we doing? What are we doing in 2025? And let me know down below if you have a couple things you want to share of what you're planning to do for 2025, and let's support each other as we go into this new year. Because the end of 2024 definitely has felt a little bit weird, but I'm not letting that stop me, okay? 2025 is going to be amazing. So first thing and foremost, I'm looking at doing a long-term pop-up this year. Now, what is that long-term pop-up, you might say? My hope and goal is a holiday market in New York City. I know, I'm already thinking about next holiday season. Hear me out though. I did the whole round of pops-ups this year. Now, I know the ones that are good for me now. I know the ones I'm not going to do anymore. And there still are maybe a few I'm going to just sprinkle in and try in 2025. Highly possible. Okay. The thing is, though, having a long-term pop-up or something like the holiday markets here in New York City, you're there for like 3 months and you get into a routine. You get in front of a lot of people, to be honest, because they're doing a ton of advertising that you're there and you get a lot of foot traffic. You have potential to expose your brand. It kind of legitimizes your brand, honestly, to be able to get into one of those. And in general, it would really push me. I'd be like, why on earth do you want to push yourself? Is because if I did a long-term pop-up like that, I would have to hire help. And my business is very specific, very niched, very different. And so the people I have to hire, the training I have to do is not your typical sales associate. So it's going to be a very interesting time. At the same time, I feel like it would expose me more versus me just going back and doing the same rotation of holiday markets, especially for the fact that my brand is not based on novelty. My brand does not have seasonal scents. My brand does not have seasonal products. So my other concern, of course, is going back around the loop that I did this holiday season is that I won't make as many sales because people already got a portrait from me. Now, of course, we all know tons of people with pets. So hopefully people still want to purchase, but there's no guarantee in that. So that's kind of the problem is that I don't necessarily have new stuff to bring to markets. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to try to introduce new products this year, which is another thing moving forward in 2025. I do want to introduce new products, but to be honest, these products, I'm not sure how I would sell them at a market. So first thing I'm starting with is wooden pet portraits that are much bigger, right? These are actually really beautiful. This is not something I can do at my markets. This is not something I can bring with me. So this is strictly an online only deal right now. Eventually I have to figure out how would this manifest in a market or at a stall. But I do know in 2025, I want to start making larger items. This also in turn would allow me to have something that's a bit higher priced. It's an alternative to someone who wants also a bigger piece. I've had people asking me for something bigger, not just these small items that I create. So this has also been asked for by my community that they want a larger item from me. And so this is my first realm into that. And hopefully moving forward as well, I want to kind of explore and figure out what more things I can do. The last thing I'm looking forward to and have a goal for in 2025 is more wholesale and consignment. So I'm kind of putting them together because it really varies on the relationship. So I would like to do more wholesaling, and my goal is to reach out to more people and do wholesaling. I've gotten more comfortable with understanding how to potentially advertise my products to wholesale and how to offer my products to wholesale, which I dabbled in this year, but I didn't really get really serious about it. The other side of it is consignment, and I already have a potential partnership lined up for that because I do things like pet tags, and if they're local in New York, I could set that up for them, offer that for them, and then fulfill the orders for them, and that would be on a consignment basis. There are things like that I'm looking at exploring more in 2025. Now, wholesale and consignment is a whole other thing that is not nearly as lucrative from a financial standpoint, but it can be really lucrative from a brand prospect. So you kind of have to figure out if it's worth it or not for you. I want to try it a little bit more just to kind of see what it could turn into for my brand, but I'm not totally sold that that is something that I'm going to do a lot of. I think if anything, I would end up doing more consignment with my pet tags because that's something unique that can be offered. I can fulfill the orders for them if they're local in New York City. And I would love to do more of that where my pet tags are getting out there a little bit more and getting seen more because a lot of people ask me if I make pet tags, but then they have no idea because I don't take them with me to pop-ups anymore. So thank you so much for sticking around. If you stuck till the end, let me know in the comments below any of your 2025 goals that you are willing to share or want to share, or maybe you want an accountability buddy, right? So, hey, let's be accountability buddies that we are going to make some of these goals, even if it's just one goal, even if it's just one goal on that 2025 list, come true this coming year. And thanks so much for hanging out with me. Subscribe if you want more tips and tricks on small business content or want to see more about popping up in New York City. And I'll see you soon. Bye.